Hey guys, welcome to the channel. We have the SLA023 here, and no, we haven't traveled back in time. I borrowed this watch from Ryan at Bezel House because of the Tudor Black Bay 58 Blue being on waitlist and is the most hyped Blue Dial diver, but it's not the only one out there. I figured, what's another alternative that's kind of underappreciated? And this is the first one that came to mind. Let's check it out. We can trace the SLA023's history and lineage as far back as 1968, and that also does include all the Marinemasters in between as well. When we look back at the 60s, it was really Seiko's intention to be competitive along with the Swiss manufacturers at the time in the dive watch space. And that led Seiko to drop the 62 MAS, or the reference 6217. And this was the brand's very first 150 meter dive watch, featuring rubber waffle strap, angler case design with pronounced hour indices, straight hands, and an oversized crown at 3 o'clock. This watch was durable enough for Seiko to use in the 8th Japanese Antarctic research expedition. But it wouldn't be until later on, about a couple models after the fact, into 1968, when Seiko had dropped the monster of all dive watches. This would be the reference 6159, and this was their very first monoblock one-piece design that was capable of diving to depths of 300 meters and be fully watertight. Not only just that, it was important of a watch to Seiko that they actually gave it a Grand Seiko movement that beat at 10 vibrations per second, accurate enough to earn its professional grade. And the watch featured gilt accent on the dial, large sword hands, chunkier hour indices, and a rounded off monoblock case that allowed it for water resistance of 300 meters. The crown at 4 o'clock and the overall case design would be iconic, cemented within the watches that came after it. And as we look over into the history of Seiko later on, that design language is carried on in every single watch. Among many of firsts along the 50-year history of Seiko, we would see that design language even carried over to the SKX. Subsequently, in 2005, Seiko dropped the very first spring drive 600 meter dive watch that also had a very similar case to the 6159. Now, where does this all tie into with the SLA023? In part is that it's nearly identical in design, but it also features a Grand Seiko movement, the caliber 8L35, and Seiko retained the 300 meter water resistance, as they've also kept that one-piece structured design. This watch is as important to Seiko as the Submariner to Rolex and the Seamaster to Omega, and I'm happy to have one to review with you today. Let's get into the full details. Introduced in 2019, the SLA023 was dubbed the Blue Marinemaster, where Seiko had moved the Marinemaster lineup into the Prospects line as a way to move the Prospects line a step up to mark them as professional grade watches. Many have complained that the Prospects X logo shouldn't be there. I, however, feel that it doesn't detract away from the overall beauty of the watch. I would like to see Marinemaster there instead, but however, I still think this is quite a nice dial. Looking at the movements, you're getting the caliber 8L35, which beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is a Grand Seiko movement, and it is giving you 50-hour power reserve and accuracy up to about 4 seconds per day, as I measured on the time grapher. It is a smooth operator, I will say. Dial execution, superb. You're getting sunburst blue with brushed hour and minute hands and a gold second hands that sweeps around quite beautifully with 300 meters in gold. You're getting a screw down crown that aids in the 300 meter water resistance too, and it is etched in deep relief with that Prospects logo, a nice touch to have. Case thickness is under 16 millimeters. You're getting drilled lugs. When was the last time you saw that? And a nice chamfered edge that splits the top and bottom half of the watch. making it look a lot thinner than it is. Bezel operation is really quite special. 120 clicks and as smooth, and I will say this, as a Submariner. There are audible detents to let you know that you've clicked it in place. And the bezel itself is ceramic, but also loomed. The bezel is loomed for the first quarter gradation, as you see here. It also has quite nice knurling, deep enough for you to get a hold of. You won't be slipping around with this. This really is intended for professional use. The sapphire crystal is special too. It is flat, but actually domed underneath to give the dial distortion as if it's underwater. It's making me feel like this watch is quite special in its own regard, featuring the Kanagawa wave on the back, a trademark classic. You're also getting solid end links that accompany the bracelet too. And speaking of the finishing of the overall case, superb. Zaratsu polishing is what you're getting here. It's mirror-like. From the top part of the case, you can see where it is broken apart from that satinated finishing at the top of the lugs to the angular bottom half where it's high polished Zaratsu finishing. The case is coated in Diashield coating too to aid in the longevity and scratch resistance too. I just love the way this thing plays with the light. That Zaratsu polishing is reserved for Grand Seiko, but it's nice to see here in this watch. The star of the bracelet is actually this clasp and its ratcheting system. Similar to the glide lock, it gives you adjustments for when you are wearing a wetsuit. See, as I pull that clasp right there, I'm able to move out the adjustments, and I can pull it out further by just clicking it out. It's a very smart system. I love that they executed this in a thin piece of steel on the bracelet where it's hidden. Beautiful touch. The bracelet finishing is good. Satinated and also high polished in the center thin flanks right there that you see. The overall wearability of this watch is good. I have a 6¼ inch wrist. At 44mm, it's not a small watch, but it wears quite comfortably. It has wrist presence, more than any other Seiko I've worn. This is a beautiful watch. Let's get into the final impressions. So why did I bring this watch up as a conversation? And that's really because the Tudor Black Bay 58 Blue has been the most talked about blue dive watch within the last few years, and I feel like this Seiko SLA023 has kind of gone under the radar a bit. But they have different, actually, they have almost similar price points for that matter, and that's worthy of conversation by itself. I did, in fact, own the Tudor Black Bay 58, the original, and that was a cracking watch. The dimensions were perfect, the dial was beautiful, and the way it wore was comfortable. In fact, when I look at that watch by its own self, it was nearly the most perfect watch I've owned, though I was kind of hesitant with the gilt. In fact, looking at the Seiko has some positive points over the Tudor. One part is that you're getting a ceramic bezel. A second part is that the overall finishing is superior to the Tudor because you're getting Zaratsu polishing, and that Zaratsu polishing elevates this watch to the next level. It's just so much sharper and more detailed. Now, some weak points is that crown. I found that sometimes the crown would not screw in properly. You have to take your time with it, but that might just be my copy. However, looking at the overall execution of the Seiko, it is an immensely superb watch. Now, don't forget, you can get the Seiko for sometimes at a discount, which you cannot get the Tudor at a discount, and you'd have to wait for it too. There are wait lists for it. Other things that go for the Seiko is that you are technically buying into the heritage watch for Seiko. This watch is as important to Seiko as a Submariner to Rolex, and in that way, it could be argued as important as the Black Bay to Tudor. On that note, the other things that are to be considered for the Seiko, even though it is at 44mm, is the fact that it has serious wrist presence. The time that I wore the Seiko for about 2 weeks, I got so many compliments from other individuals that I work with and other individuals that I spend time hanging out with too. They noticed that watch, but the Tudor kind of slid under the radar a bit. That's just a point that goes for the Seiko, if you're really going to pay attention to that. However, they're both cracking watches. My favorite goes towards the Seiko if you can get it for a discount, but if the Tudor is the one that you've always wanted, get the Tudor. Anyways guys, I want to show you a wristwatch check of a recent pickup of mine. This is the Chronostop from Omega, and it's from 1968, the reference 145009. I'm hoping to do a video on this watch next. Let me know how you feel about that, if you think it's something you'd watch. Leave a like and comment, and definitely consider subscribing. Now, I'll also show you what the lume looks like for the Seiko at the end of the video too. But on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.
This is it, guys, the SLA023 fully lit up. I like the fact that the bezel pip is also lumed with the first quarter of the bezel. Of course, this is Seiko's Lumibright, and they have generously applied it on the indices and the hands. It is evenly distributed and it looks to be very high quality. Altogether, I think this is Seiko's Lumibright at its best.